I feel like I'm on a chair and the back of my chair is my books because they're all behind me. Welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Ria, and in today's video we are going to be going over my top 15 reads of 2025. I have separated it into fantasy and romance because those are the two genres I read mostly. And we're going to start off with the fantasies, I think. Stats are that I read 96 books last year and I managed to narrow it down to a 15 top books list. I had originally had a 22 book list, but I did manage to narrow it down to the ones that I feel very passionately about and the ones I am definitely like, these are on a top list of books that will remain with me forever. 15 out of 96, that is very good. But it's also like, how have I been reading so many books that aren't like absolute god tier, changed my life good? Also, I will preface this by saying this list is not in any particular order. They are all god tier. I could not narrow it down to one favourite or a top 5 favourite. It's just a top 15 list instead of anything else. If I've got a series or 2 books by the same author, I've considered them one just so it's slightly more narrowed down. I think there's 17 books overall, but I think there are 4 that I've done as like 2 instead of 4. As I said, let's get straight into the first category, which is fantasy. So the first book I have is A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This was so good. Originally this was a soft DNF for me because I found that the first like 150 pages to 200 pages, it was very slow. And I feel with any Jennifer L. Armentrout book, you're going to get that. I have kind of lost my patience with this series now. That's a whole other story. But I did absolutely adore this book. I don't know what it was. I think once I got past the slow point of this, it did really pick up and I did really feel the love that I had felt in From Blood and Ash between the story, the plot, as well as the characters. The only thing I don't like about this series is the way the world building is done. I feel it's a very cheap and easy way to have done it instead of actually putting some effort into it. I feel it's just a kind of lazy way in my opinion, and that kind of leads into my experience with the third book. I didn't enjoy the third book. I loved this. I didn't like the third book after, and I think I'm giving up with the series, which is unfortunate because of how much I love these first 2 books, and that is why this second book is on my top 15 in 2025. I did absolutely adore it, and I could not put it down once it got to the point where things actually were happening. It was definitely a god tier book for me and a god tier read, so I was very disappointed when I was annoyed by certain things that happened in the third book, and that is to do with the world building and the way the world building is so lazy. Aside from that, I genuinely had such a good time reading this book. I remember sitting on the train when I was going to work and finishing it. So good. I just love the relationship development between Poppy and Castile in this specifically, and then the plot that actually begins to happen beyond the relationship as well, and I loved the ending. And then I have City of Gods and Monsters by Kayla Edwards. This is book 1 in the House of Devil series, and I feel I read this so long ago now. It's just kind of crazy. To be fair, I haven't even finished book 2 yet, and it's been so long since I picked this book up, but I absolutely adored this as I was reading it. I know lots of people compare it to Crescent City, or at least House of Earth and Blood. To me, I get what you're saying, it is an urban fantasy, but then beyond that point and the city setting, it really is very different. It's sort of a mystery plot as well, but aside from those 3 little things, it is so different to Crescent City that I don't even know why people compare it really. Loved following them and genuinely really enjoyed this story. I felt like it was quite a unique setup with the Dark Slayers. I really enjoyed my time in this world. It is a longer fantasy, but I feel with the amount of plot that happens, it is not overly detailed. It is literally a perfect amount of time that you need to be in this world for the story, because every plot development that happens throughout is important to the end point, and what I assume is going to be important in book 2, 3 and 4, and then obviously the last books of the series. I feel this was such a good read where the plot is kind of a mystery. This is your book, and I definitely recommend it, and I've heard so many good things about the next books as well, so I am very excited for those. Definitely recommend if you're looking for an urban fantasy. This is top tier. And we have Reign of Shadows and Endings by Melissa K. Rorick. This is similar to A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire for me. I absolutely adored this book. Honestly, I don't think I've ever read a book where I am so frustrated because of these characters, for these characters, but I'm also like loving it because of that fact. There is no other way I know how to describe this. I was literally on the edge of my seat. I was so frustrated whilst reading it for the longest time. Literally most of the time I was in this book I was frustrated, but I also loved the fact that I was frustrated because I knew that is what you're meant to feel like. None of these characters are likeable. I assume there's going to be character development in the next 2 books because I've read the second and there's like none in that either, but I assume there's going to be character development. It's a very dark setup and it's a very unjust world where if you're not a powerful being then you're kind of just forced to live as you're forced to live. Like, if you suffer or you're powerful. They are cruel characters, but I really want to see some development from all 3 of them. I did really enjoy this, and I feel like it's a very unique setup as well, because it is not like your standard fae, vampire, wolves sort of fantasy. There are legacy in this. The fae are sources to the legacy, and the legacy use that to literally take their power from them to replenish their own power. It's a very unique setup, and I think this is also an urban fantasy. It's a modern setting because there are phones, etc., but it's not a modern city sort of vibe. I just loved my entire time in this world and in this book. The first book specifically, I didn't really love the second book, but I recall just loving this. Honestly, a top fantasy read of this year. Okay, and then the next book I have is An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. This is obviously book 1 in the Ember Quartet, and I also read this so long ago now. I just recall absolutely loving this. It was a bit of a slower start, which is fair enough in a new fantasy world. It took a minute to get to where the plot really starts, but I did actually really love the introduction to this world. And if you don't know, I love this sort of setup as well. There is something about a heavily corrupt empire with political aspects in a fantasy that just hits so hard. There's just something about these corrupt empires in a fantasy world, especially when it's a historic empire setting, like this is ancient Rome. It's just something I really love in a fantasy. This was so good. Literally had the best time reading this, and I know it's been heavily recommended since I started reading, and it took me so long to actually pick it up. I had the best time. I love Leia, I love Elias, and I love when they meet and the way they're kind of like, they can't really help each other. I don't know how to describe it, but it is so good. It has the aspect of trials as well, which I feel a lot of people are now over. I am one of those people who kind of doesn't really read trials anymore because I feel it is a very done plot. The way this was actually really good. The other side plots and the way we follow Leia in this as well, who is spying for the resistance or the rebels after her brother is arrested for treason. So it has those really good side plots where you're kind of on the edge of your seat for the other characters, and I really enjoyed the academy setting as well. I don't even know if I described that very well, but it is the best ancient historic sort of setup that I have read in a while. Also, book 2 was absolutely amazing as well. The first like half of it was so fast paced. The next fantasy I have is Zodiac Academy. I am talking about the entire series that I have read, so 7 books. or maybe more, including the novellas. Every single one of these books actually had me so emotional. The lowest rating I had from this series was a 3.5 star, which was Zodiac Academy: The Awakening as told by the boys. It's not even the best series ever. I mean, obviously so many people hate this, but for me, I cannot describe to you the addiction that I had whilst reading this. I cannot believe I read this over a year ago now. I remember picking up The Awakening, being like, oh, I might not like this. 10 pages later into book one, I was absolutely hooked and absolutely addicted to the world, to the characters and to the plot and the series. So I literally binged the first 4 books in a week. I remember having the deliveries every other day. It probably cost me like £200 to get even the first 7 books. It was so expensive. I had them all delivered within like 2 weeks because I was so hooked in the series. If you love them in the way that you want to read every single book in the shortest time that you can. And I have not had this sort of feeling where you just want to get through it as fast as you can because you're so obsessed with the series since Throne of Glass. It took me a year and a half to even find a series remotely similar. It's not just the plot, it is the writing is so easy to read, the characters, the character development that you start to see throughout the series. Comparing the boys in book 1 to book 5, book 6, book 7, they are like different characters. Telling someone who is on book 1 how it's gonna be, you would not believe that person. Lance and Darcy, they are the main relationship in this that I truly care about. They are top 2 relationship alongside Aline and Rowan because wow, this series changed me. Lance and Darcy changed me. The endings of every single one of these books, don't even talk to me. I love Zodiac Academy so much and I wish, I don't know, the fall off is kind of real. I feel like the further you get into the series, the more dragged out the books are, but I still need to finish this series. It's so good. Next book I have is On Wings of Blood. I read this more recently, I think it was September, which isn't actually that recent. I really enjoyed this. This was a very slow start, don't get me wrong. It had a lot of world building, but it was world building that I actually really enjoyed. It was also a very unique setup. The female main character just kind of appears in this world and is taken by these vampires and is said, you're betrothed to the main male character in this and you're going to just study because you are the last dragon rider with dragon rider blood. So you don't get a choice. This is what's happening. You're doing this. I don't care. But that is how it starts and it is so good. Book 1 specifically is so good. I don't know how to describe this to you. It is a world in which is similar to Zodiac Academy where if you are not the most powerful being, you're kind of just gonna suffer. You've got to be cruel to get somewhere in this world because everyone who is someone is willing to step on everyone else to make themselves better. I don't know what it is about that. I do quite like those worlds because normally it's always a soft-hearted person deep down that is actually getting somewhere, and it kind of goes against what the entire setup is, which is something I actually really enjoy. We kind of learn as we go with this. You learn alongside the main character and it's just a really fun setup. Yeah, I had such a fun time with this. The next book is The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. I always say that if you love a gothic, atmospheric, dark fantasy-esque read, she's your girl. She is the author you should go and pick up. It pains me that she's only got 3 books out. She's amazing at what she does. I feel like we don't really get this sort of story enough in the fantasy world. I love a knight fantasy romance. I didn't really expect to love it as much as I did. From page 1, it was something I'd never really read before and I just enjoyed my time in it. Such a unique story and I really enjoyed specifically the end of this book. Rachel has this really amazing ability to allow you to lose yourself in the world because it feels so atmospheric and you can just imagine everything that is going on around them in this book. I loved it and I cannot wait for book 2. And then the last fantasy I have, The Wolf King. If you haven't seen me talk about this book or watched the reading vlog I read this in, you need to, because this was probably my favourite fantasy aside from Zodiac Academy of last year. This was definitely my favourite fantasy of last year. I don't know what it was. I was absolutely addicted to this story, to the characters. I have never read a love triangle where I actively at one point like both of them and am rooting for both of them. By the end of book 2 I definitely knew who I would rather, but throughout book 1 I genuinely was rooting for both of them at one point. The actual plot and the story, specifically in book 2, is where it really got me as well. It was so addictive. I literally could not put this book down. Every spare second I had, I would be reading this book because I was so invested in the story. Every second of this was perfection and I really enjoyed myself. It wasn't even the most life-altering read ever, even though it was. It just was so much fun and so addictive. And I just love where the story went and is going. I've said this before, I think, but by the end of book 2, I genuinely had no idea where the story is going to go in book 3. I still don't. I still cannot guess who she's going to end up with. I do have hopes, and I do think she should end up with, and probably will end up with, one of them, but I can't guarantee it. That was the fantasy. I have been talking for ages. Good luck editing me. We're gonna move on to the romance. Okay, so for the romance, I'm going to start with Longshot and Hookshot by Kennedy Ryan. I am considering these two as one together. Obviously, same author. This was one of the most emotional romances I have ever read. I wouldn't even consider it a romance at the forefront because the first part of this is truly agony for the reader and Iris. So this is a book written in response to things that have happened in real life, in response to a woman's story or multiple women's story who have experienced similar things to this. It really does make you feel that much more connected to it. The first half of this book was actually very difficult to read, and I would always tell you to check your trigger warnings going into this. Make sure you're going in carefully with this. Make sure you're aware of what you're reading. It is heavy and it is a very deep and sensitive topic. It genuinely makes me so emotional to say that you love someone and then do that. You gotta be twisted. I feel it is a very important story if you're dating someone in a remotely viewed position, specifically sports, where your partner is in the limelight and is seen and adored by fans. I feel it can be even harder to speak out and have your story truly listened to. It's difficult for the regular person, so let alone when someone is loved and adored by people genuinely think, no, like I know this person even though they don't, and they just genuinely believe that person would never do such a thing even though you don't know them. You have the main male character in this who does actually show her how a relationship should be, and he does treat her with so much care after everything she's been through. It gives her time to come around to it. It's very difficult. I just remember sobbing for Iris at 2 AM. Genuinely, I've never read anything like it, so please definitely go in with care. Hookshot was slightly lighter. I'd say quite a lot lighter than Longshot. It still had its sides to it which are deeper and more emotional. I feel Kennedy Ryan always writes a more emotional and sensitive romance instead of just a rom-com, light-hearted sort of read. I do still feel she handled this story with so much care, and I did still really love this book. For me, Longshot just hit so hard. It is such an emotional romance that this doesn't feel like a smidge compared to it, but I did still really enjoy it and I really had so much, I don't want to say fun because I feel like these romances are so much deeper than that, but I did still have a really good time in this, and I loved the main characters. I feel they were really well written together, and I loved the fact that they made sure they were friends first before they allowed anything else to develop between them. I had such a good time, and it was also a New York City setting, which I always love if you don't know. Then we have another 2 books by the same author, that is Wait For It by Mariana Zapata, as well as All Roads Lead Here. I again loved Wait For It so much. I did still love All Roads Lead Here, but this really took the crown for me. It is the first book I read by her, and it is definitely, I feel, maybe potentially going to be the best I've read by her. I don't know what it was. This is probably my favourite romance of the year in 2025. Potentially even my favourite read. I absolutely devoured this. I loved every single second I spent in this story, and I genuinely just think this is a perfect romance. I love how she writes a slow burn and how it is actually a slow burn. You don't get the relationship until 80 to 90% of the way into a book. You know then the relationship is friendship based, it's not lusty or insta-lovey, it's really them getting to know each other as friends before anything, especially as Diana in this is looking after her brother's children. I genuinely just feel she knew that they were the most important things to her. You see that throughout, and to see her let in Dallas and then become friends and then become more, it was just so lovely. And to see Dallas willing to do pretty much anything to help her out. Honestly, don't be intimidated by the size, because it is on the longer side for a romance. It was so good. You could literally read it as you could a 350-page romance. Obviously, All Roads Lead Here. Again, another amazing slow burn. Genuinely loved how long it takes these relationships to actually develop, and I love the fact that you get the friendships first. I don't know what it even was about this. Every single second I just really enjoyed. I love the setup. I just love how she didn't even really know what she wanted to do. She just sticks with the job she gets, and it's just kind of, again, the friendship. Both of the books I've read, there's an aspect of younger children that aren't really small, but they're kind of like teens. They're not, both of the ones I've read aren't actually one of the main characters' biological children. They are normally a family friend, a family member, their child that they're looking after, and I loved that. I loved Amos, and I loved the way the relationship between Spice and Aurora was developed around that. I love how he was such a key thing for her as well. I love this so much, and I cannot stop recommending her book specifically. I need to read her entire backlist. Then I have Rewind It Back by Liz Tom Ford. This was the literal best way she could have ended out the series. I feel Rio having a second chance book was literal perfection. The fact that it had been 6 years and he hadn't gotten past her, she was it for him. It was actually so true to his character, especially because he seems like such a light-hearted, jokeful kind of guy. To have a deeper side to him and have his thoughts, his thought process, it just seemed, it felt so true to his character, and it felt like he was much deeper than he seems as a side character in the first book specifically. He is still a very jokey, light-hearted guy, but then you see a serious side to him more as well. I really loved that, and I love the way you see the found family kind of come together, especially for the last time. I can't believe this series is done. It's literally my favourite romance series of all time. I had such a good time reading this, and I genuinely adore Rio and Hallie together, and I feel their story was perfect, and it was the best way she could have rounded out the series. Just was perfect, and I can't wait for the next series. I feel the setup for it has been amazing, and I'm so excited for Monty and Reese's as well. I literally could speak about that book for ages. I'm limiting myself. Then have Insatiable. This stands for the entire Edge of Darkness trilogy. Please also check your trigger warnings for this book and this series. It is another very, very, very deep and sensitive story alongside long shot. I don't even know where to begin with this. It was so heart-wrenching to read. I always say this, but specifically Stacey's story always gets me because of how ignored it felt throughout the books. We get a scene in, I think it's book 2, where it's acknowledged by her friends. I think it's the entire kind of group at that point. It gets acknowledged and talked about for like 5 pages maybe not even that. And obviously Cade sees it all and is kind of acknowledged between them momentarily. It is literally that. You have 3 books and it's probably talked about for all of 10 pages. I can't even describe my rage towards it because every other page is literally Cade's trauma, which I understand he has been through so much, but the fact that Stacey's own trauma was so stepped on and ignored, it really grates on my nerves. I feel so annoyed by it. I don't know if I just kind of have blocked out them talking about it and acknowledging it more. I don't know, it feels like it felt inferior to everything else that was happening. She lived through it for her entire teenage years. How long did she live in that house for? Like 9-10 years? She lived in that house with that boy for so long. How long was it happening for? When he admits to her, sorry, this is like spoilers, but when he admits to her, I don't know if it was book 2 or book 3, I felt sick to my stomach. I obviously feel so much toward Cade as well, but I think for me the real reason I loved this series is because of Stacey and how strong a character she is, because of how much she's gone through and how much she can push past it. Even after all the things she's been through, she has to go through everything Cade's been through as well. Oh my god, I can't. Then we have Book Lovers by Emily Henry. This was actually just such a fun, giggly time. I've put this on this list because I had so much fun with it. It was one of those reads that I just was laughing out loud at my page, at my book, because it was so good. I have only read 2 of Emily Henry's books right now, and this is definitely my favourite so far. I feel it might be my favourite overall, but obviously I can't really say that when I've only read 2 of her books. I just find her humour so funny. In this book specifically, I just found myself really laughing at the lines she was writing and the delivery of them. And I also just related so much to Nora in this book. I feel I relate to all her characters at the moment. All the characters I've read, I just saw myself in Nora so much, and I loved her love for New York, and I feel that's just Emily Henry as a whole. I really love her adoration for New York. That's me. I just had such a fun time with this. Next book I have is Mate by Ali Hazelwood. This is another book similar to Book Lovers where I just had so much fun. The first 30 to 40% is a bit slower, but again, I just had such a good time reading this. It was such a good break from the standard sort of books that I read, and I actually have not been the same since this. I need more books that are this good. I have read Bride, didn't hit the same for me. This was amazing. I wish I could have 10 more in the series. Again, I found Ali Hazelwood's humour and just like writing style so different to the usual that I read. This was the first book I read by her and I just had such a good time in it. Also, she is just so like smart in certain areas. Like she'll have these niche things that she just knows, and I find that so unique and so funny, and I just love her for it. The last book I have is Slapshot by Chelsea Curto. This is the 3rd book in the DC Stars series. My favourite. Absolutely adored my time in this book. I found it actually unexpectedly emotional. I was not expecting going into this that I was going to cry over it, and I did. I fully admit that. Madeline, our FMC's daughter in this, is deaf. Madeline and her can obviously sign between themselves. Piper and Liam can sign as well, so they all can communicate between each other. But obviously, as a young girl being deaf, sign language is her only form of communication, and obviously like writing is as well, but it's her main form of communication, so most people can't really speak to her aside from writing to her and her writing back, which is obviously not the best way for her. I just found that so emotional, and then seeing him learn sign language so he can speak to her what more do you want? It was perfect. I love him as a character. I just loved all three of them together. I feel the dynamic worked so well, and the way they just kind of, again, the friendship that formed before. It's another slow burn, which I just love in a romance. I feel like it hits so much harder than insta love. I just had such a good time in this, and like I said, I was not expecting it to be as emotional as it was. The deeper sides to this were what made it for me. It wasn't even the romance. I mean, I did absolutely love the romance between them, but it was also Lucy and everyone surrounding her and being sort of supportive of her, and Madeline finding a better person to be with and a better friendship group after not having that. I honestly love that so much. I've talked for so long, my throat hurts. Those are the top 15 books of 2025. I feel like I had a good mix, and I had a good lot of books that I really connected to and really loved. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you get some recommendations from this. I hope to see you all in the next one. I will see you soon. Thank you so much for watching.